Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I have a great opportunity to talk to Lydia Chilton. Lydia is an assistant professor at Columbia University at the Department of Computer Science. And Lydia has been focusing her research on applications of AI. So thank you so much for finding the time and just chatting with me today. I have a few questions for you. First of all, can you tell me a little bit about your journey to AI? What inspired you to get a PhD and what inspired you to become a professor?
A long time ago, almost 20 years ago at this point, I was an undergrad at MIT and trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And the idea of AI was always very interesting to me. But then I looked at what AI was actually capable of and I was not impressed. I'm like, I need to do something else. And enabling people to connect and collaborate through the internet worldwide was the thing that just caught my heart, my mind, my attention. I went all into it. I did a lot of crowdsourcing. That was one of the waves I did. I thought that was fantastic. And how can we make big artifacts from tiny contributions from a lot of folks? I actually heard about that when an Amazon recruiter came and was like, hey, we have this random thing called Mechanical Turk. It's cool. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I just went and drove that in an entire direction. And I did that for a long time and we kept moving that. And at some point, AI started to do some impressive things. I was skeptical at first. I'm like, it's just like writing more rules, and you can never tell when it's just a mirage, like they've just found, oh, it looks like it's working now. AI has had many of these in this history, like the ELIZA program, or I'm like, I don't know, the 70s. Like it looked like it was a chatbot, but all it did was like, ooh, tell me why. So it's just a mirage, really. And so I waited, and there was the whole deep learning wave where you feed it in tens of thousands of examples of shirts, like white shirts and black shirts, and it can finally tell what's a white shirt and black shirt. And it was new and interesting technology in that no one was hard coding the rules, but it was really frustrating because you had to give it tens of thousands of examples of very simple concepts. And that also didn't really appeal to me so much. But then the day I saw GPT-3 and it was completing sentences and had this common sense, and they built a demo that I could use, and I didn't have to trust them or just see that I could type it in and try everything under the sun and convince myself that there was something real here. That it didn't always have to be right for me to find it interesting, like it always had something relevant to say. And I was like, ooh, this is a nice challenge. What can we do with this? Because it is a technology looking for a use case. And that spoke to me.
The GPT-3 was really recently. It hasn't even been that long ago. I feel like a lot of us had this realization at maybe the same exact time. And being in academics, part of your job is teaching and working with students. With new students coming in, what are you seeing as a trend in their minds? What types of questions they are the most interested in? Because I feel like obviously those are the people that are going to be leading this industry just a few years in the future.
So the new students, they all use GPT for everything. If I'm going to write an essay, they would never start fresh. They start with GPT. And so I try to lean into them and say, okay, how would you help somebody do this task? And if you've used GPT to write essays or write emails in a really good way, how would you box that up to help someone else do it? And so I'm trying to show them that how to marry their deep knowledge of using an AI product with their computer science skills and that design sense of really understanding what the problem is and who else has this problem and who's it for and how to pitch it and how to make it a nice experience. Even if all you've done is made just a really perfect prompt, that's really valuable to other people. How can I use this to solve a problem, to do a thing, to have that like magic moment? And I find that's when somebody uses a product to do something useful. A lot of things have to come together, and I teach them that you just have to try a lot of things. You will find a fit. There's better fit, worse fit. So at the end of the day, what I really end up teaching them is design, disguised as technology, but the design skills are what they really need, and they don't know that until they see it. A moment that I love is this light bulb that goes off. People come in with the idea that great ideas just come to you in your sleep one day. I'm like, no, they can be manufactured. You can sit there and intentionally do it. And they do not believe me. I'm like, let me show you. Here's this class. We will do this. We will have 1,000 ideas. We will interview people. We will iterate on them. We will think deeply. They're like, oh, it's just a lot of work to have a good idea. And I'm like, yeah. It is, but that's freeing in a way. You don't have to just wait for inspiration to strike. So it gives them a totally different mental model. And right now with AI, there are so many things that you could do like in a day or a week that show that potential.
It feeds really nicely into the growth mindset approach, right? Like, you don't have to be extremely talented to be good at something. You just need to keep working at it and get better. I'm guessing a lot of us are a little bit fatigued at this point from looking at the conversational or chat experiences. So when it comes to actual user experience, what are your recommendations? What is maybe a specific advice or an approach on how can we go beyond this experience? What are the ways we can explore integrating AI across user experiences beyond just a back and forth conversation?
Yeah, so there was this magic that a lot of people felt the first time they chatted with ChatGPT, and that's been copied somewhat shallowly across every possible interface because it applies to everything, it's everywhere, and we're starting to feel the fatigue. I would say there's a general sense of AI fatigue in a lot of things. Like the first 100 or maybe 1,000 Midjourney images I saw, that's amazing. And I'm like, it's another Midjourney image. It just feels cheap and the same. If every one of them were amazing and really helpful, we wouldn't be thinking this way. It's so easy to make a shallow copy or a silly demo or a thing. It's again just like a mirage of being useful, but isn't. And so really, no matter what the interaction paradigm is, you got to make sure that the data can actually, the data that the AI has can actually address the problem. That is the number one. And I see so many people just relying on whatever's in ChatGPT. And yeah, it's got a lot of Reddit and a lot of Wikipedia and has some common sense, but like most people, to solve a real problem need something beyond that. Beyond this just like common knowledge. Like most tasks that you want to do in life, you need to talk to someone with some sort of expertise. So you have to build that in somehow. So I had students that build apps like, this is going to help you write the perfect birthday card, and they craft a prompt. They really think deeply about what makes a good birthday card. And it depends on who the audience is, and just like really thinking through those things is the key to it all. Once you have a system that you think provides an insight beyond what ChatGPT does, then I like to think about the landscape of the task. So for me, I think the biggest limitation of chat is that it's got this really linear workflow. You're going down the page. But if you're doing something like ideation, I have an idea and that branches and another idea to branch. So it's much more spatial. And so fundamentally, I need to represent that problem in space. And so this linear constraint of chat no longer works very well. And that's why like open canvases like Figma and whatever are far better for design than like a doc that goes down the page. And so that's even thinking about the size and the scale and how the problem is structured is the first thing that I would do. Additionally, most problems in life don't exist in a vacuum. In fact, there's a really fascinating, very successful startup that one of my students is a part of. It's called Riz. It's a dating assistant and a dating coach. And what you give it is a screenshot of your chats back and forth with someone, and it suggests to you things to say next. So it takes in as context this little history. Has it been 2 days since the person responded? Then I'm going to say something else. Is the person's response like lukewarm? Are they flirty? Are they not? And it's helping you read all those social cues. And so that would be so hard to type in, but just working from a screenshot is the perfect solution to that. It's also just really easy to do on your phone, is take the picture, send it in, get the AI responses back. And so it's a really nice solution that fits the person's context of these chats. It fits like that they're using their phone. They can just take the screenshot. And it fits the technology. They can read what's on the screenshot. This trend started maybe this March, April, something like that. And before that, I think the narrative is, hey, it's going to take everybody's job. And I always thought that wasn't true. It's going to enhance people's job, or at least integrate with people's job, hopefully for the better. And that seems to be the narrative going forward. So you don't nearly see the fear-mongering headlines anymore. Oh, it's going to take people's job. Like, it's just not good enough for that. It doesn't have enough deep contextual knowledge of the problem, and it doesn't have the ability to enact its solution take it to a customer, get feedback, and change it based on that. So it's missing a lot of fundamental things that people can do when they actually solve a problem in the real world. I like this integrating with products. A lot of these things, brainstorming is like the obvious thing you can do, but I like when it lets you focus on your work by doing the grunt work that nobody likes doing. Like when I answer an email, I first have to collect 18 different documents, describe like what the policies for X and Y and Z are, and then figure it out in my head about what the answer is. And if it can collect those documents for me, that's amazing. I didn't want to do that. That was not my creativity that I got to use. That was not a fun part of my job. Where we're doing a primary task, we need the AI embedded in those products. So I'm excited to see how every company out there is doing this and how well it's embedded and how well it relates and helps someone do their actual task.
Before we wrap up, I would really love to learn a little bit more about the projects that you're specifically working on right now, and if you could share them. And then also as a follow-up, where can people find them if they're looking for them?
I work on a lot of things that use AI to write code synthesis. This is a really strong capability of AI. We have this cool thing that you give it like a logo that you've made in Figma or Illustrator or whatever. It's pretty simple. Maybe it's vector graphics. You can put it in the system. AI can look at that with its vision and see what the parts are. There's a hot air balloon here. There's some mountains. There's some text. It can analyze it. It can figure out where the groups are based both on the positioning and the layers. And then it can come up with ideas for animating it. Ooh, the mountains should rise up and the balloon should float past and then the letters should appear. And if you don't like it, you can edit it. And so the first thing the AI does that I think is really fun is just give you that magical animation. That's way better than like swipe in from the left, swipe in from the right, because this is semantic. Mountains like rise up, balloons float. It gives it that like meaning of what the objects are, not just like swipe in from the left or whatever. But additionally, then to edit it, the AI looks at what it's created, this animation that it's done, and creates a novel timeline with novel buttons on it that you can adjust the things that it has created. So not only is it creating the animation, it's creating the code for the UI that edits the animation that is special and really usable. I really like AI code generation because it's an area where AI is going to continue to get better because there is a ground truth. You can run it and it can either run or not run. Run correctly or incorrectly. Whereas a lot of things in life have no right answer, like in GPT would have to ask a human, is this a good or bad email? And everyone might have a different answer. But with code, it's pretty objective. And so that will continue to get better. So we have a number of projects like this. Another one, in enabling this thing that is starting to be called exploratory programming. And I love the idea of exploratory programming because typically I would like, programming is when I bang my head against the computer for a couple weeks and try to get something to work. But if AI is writing the code, it switches to being not something that I have to labor over, but something that I can try on and that I can try one and throw it away and do it again and I don't have to worry about. I think it completely changes the stakes and the velocity of how quickly we can do that technical prototyping aspect of things. It's not perfect, but it only has to be good enough to help you get through the idea. And I see, especially with students, but with everyone, you gotta get past that first idea. It's all about speed. I'd be fine making something that if, had the app idea and it would synthesize a Figma for you or synthesize an image of that. And maybe the image had a couple layers so you can play with it. That would also be very useful. Say it's like a book recommender. Then it really, like just having lorem ipsum text in there isn't quite enough to tell you whether it's good. And so if I really Twilight, what else would I like? I do think Figma could call out to GPT for some content and some images that it would be very, very similar in many ways. And it's the same basic thing. So it could be exploratory prototyping. But I do find, I love Figma a lot, but it takes a while to make a thing. You do have to worry about the details in a way that takes you out of that explore mode and more towards, let me get these pixels right, let me label this button. And so it's really about what cognitive space are you in. Are you in the detail space or can you stay in the high level? We want people to stay in that high level to refine their idea without investing too much in the design so they can get past their first 10 designs.
I love that. And if people were to try and find your papers and maybe read some of your research, what would be a great place for them to find it?
TikTok, that would be great. We tweet about a lot of them. I basically retweet what my students do, all the real work. I'm just there to make sure I'm just a manager. Follow all of them on Twitter as well. Can I ask you a question? As a design technologist, I have met so few people who do the design and the technology. What do you think that enables you to do? What do you think that makes your superpower? That if students or other people wanted to get into that role, what does it enable you to do that just being a designer or just being a technologist doesn't enable you to do?
One is the role of a design technologist or design developer. Microsoft calls it one way, Amazon calls it a different way. I think the way that it's currently framed is in danger of being replaced by AI. Quickly and easily, you can ideate, put your idea in natural language, and you are going to get a React app out of it pretty quickly and see if that makes sense. However, at the same time, design technologist is someone who simply builds prototypes out. I think that's a very narrow view, which a lot of people probably think that way. So I wouldn't say a design technologist is somebody who's there primarily to build prototype. There are a lot of different ways that I can apply my knowledge, but answering your original questions, what does it enable me to do being both a technologist and a design-minded person? I don't call myself a designer. I don't actually work in Figma. Being in the middle between two disciplines actually helps me to not necessarily be married to either one of them. I would say I am probably a technologist designer with the technology in the beginning, just because of my skill set and so it's easier for me to write code than to go in Figma and think of something that works great and looks beautiful. When I approach building something in terms of values, I try to go back to what values a designer would have when they're trying to implement an interface or a feature. What makes the best sense as an app or as a feature to the end user is something that I keep in my mind the whole entire time. So I might have a limited time to build something. Let's say I am an engineer, I actually am shipping a feature. If I were a design-minded engineer, I would actually keep in mind, okay, with a limited time, I can only make 80% of that feature or 70% of that feature work. How can I scale it down without breaking my promise on delivering actual value to the customer? And we see ideas and features being scaled down all the time at the expense of the end user or the customer. And so what being in the middle between design and technology enables me is to think both ways, is to see the design perspective when I'm having a conversation with engineering and see the engineering perspective when I'm having a conversation with design. At the end of the day, it helps me build empathy and not be married to either and be positioned uniquely between the two disciplines. I think helps me be a better listener, and it just helps me hopefully be a better collaborator. So I am fluid and aware where I can go and sit with either one of those teams and contribute in various ways, but not necessarily being stuck within the discipline or being a part of this tribe but not that other tribe. Really helps me think of ways of how can I be a better collaborator and help other people maybe improve their collaborative skills as well.
I think that many collaborations are best when someone knows both. There's someone who's got a foot in each camp. Someone can help translate, help balance the needs, help see when maybe one group is going way too crazy into the design or way too crazy into the technology. Balance between them. When shipping a feature, you're going to cut all sorts of corners. Like, you cannot do all the things. And so someone has to know both sides in order to make the call of how to balance it. And I think having both those mindsets of, I know enough about the user to make and enough about the technology, what's easy enough for me to build, it's going to be important enough to users. And that's what I feel like a lot of startups have to do. Students who go off into startups as technologists, they start wearing all the hats. And I think that's a really rich training. I hope that people continue to do that in life, and then they'll see themselves as someone who can wear multiple hats. And as we switch jobs more and people don't just major in something and work in that thing for the rest of their career, I think we went a little bit too narrow in terms of telling people how to get an education. You want it used to be you wanted this T, some shallow but a lot of depth. Now I think you want 2 or 3 pieces of depth and then some shallow. That's how I recommend people to learn and grow. And technology and design just go so well together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time and for this chat. I really enjoyed it. And thank you everybody for watching. And for anybody who's interested in Lydia's work, I'm going to post some links under this video so you can access that easier. And hopefully this is not the last conversation that we have. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of new questions popping up in the upcoming months and in the future. Thank you so much.